Alright, hello everyone, my name is Anne. I'm a junior professor at the University of Erlangen, Nuremberg, which is about 250 kilometers north from here. And today I'm going to talk about how physics models and machine models could help each other and improve. So on the one hand, we have musculoskeletal simulations that what we want to do with, for example, is make these fancy simulations that we can use, for example, to predict how people walk or to reconstruct their motions from sparse or incomplete sensor sets. However, in practice, what we usually get if we do not apply any of our tricks is something like this, which is again something that our friends at MIT do not necessarily approve of. And so what that means is that simulations are not accurate due to different things that we're not very sure about, such as the objective that humans minimize, their musculoskeletal model, because we cannot, for example, measure length, mass, or inertia of different segments. We would actually like to personalize these simulations, and also generally optimizations are slow, so if we want to do these things in real time, we cannot use optimizations. On the other hand, we have machine learning models that can also be used quite nicely for biomechanics applications. But generally speaking, as Sophie already talked about on Monday, data sets are small because it just takes a lot of time to do measurements, and also there are differences between labs. So, so on both sides we have some disadvantages, and what we've been working on recently is combining both the two, so combining neural networks with machine learning to use the advantages of both and combine them to improve our outcomes. So today I wanted to talk about 4 examples that we have been working on recently. First of all, what we've been working on is training a neural network to replicate or improve upon a heel-tap muscle model. So to predict muscle force from activation and length. We've also worked on doing metabolic cost estimations using a neural network so that we predict metabolic costs with neural networks. We've looked at personalization of musculoskeletal models and objectives, also again using neural networks. And then finally, also to enhance neural networks, what we've been looking at is doing data augmentation with simulations to enhance the size of our data sets. However, unfortunately, I only have 6 minutes, so we'll only talk about these 2 examples today. So here, those of you that are familiar with the heel-tap model probably also know that it's not necessarily very accurate because it's based on these measurements that were performed in pretty static conditions. So here are some examples of things that are not captured by the model, such as a changing optimal fiber length with activation, or force enhancement during lengthening and force depression during shortening. What we want to try and see if we can actually improve upon the heel model using a neural network. And what we did is we used this data set of guinea fowls that was collected by Monica Tedi and Gewiner in 2011, where they measured about 15 trials on 4 different birds, and they measured sonomicrometry, so muscle length, EMG, so muscle activation, and they had a tendon buckle to measure the force on two muscles, the lateral gastrocnemius and the digital flexor. And what we did is we used a convolutional neural network on this data set to predict the muscle force. And so here you see the results. And so on top you see a test on the same bird that was used for training, but a different trial. So we used one muscle for training from one bird, and then we applied it to different test cases. So first another trial of the same bird and the same muscle. And here what you see is that the neural network in red actually follows the measured line very well and much better than the heel model. So that was quite nice. Also, when it worked still pretty good on when we had the same muscle, so the lateral gastrocnemius, but a different bird. Here we also generally got much higher correlations and lower RMSEs. However, for the other muscle, it actually did not work as well, and the main reason that is probably because we do not have very good estimations of the maximum isometric force. So there's still a long way to go, but eventually we hope to also be able to include such a network into our musculoskeletal models. Then about data augmentation, what we did is we had a data set of measured IMU data, and we want to predict biomechanics. So we split our measure data up into the training data and testing data. And then based on the training data, we did some random sampling around the mean and the standard deviation of this data, created simulations based on that, and thereby created a much larger simulated data set. So what we found was that, so here you see our testing data, our measured training data, and our predicted training data. And the nice thing that we found is that our simulated data covers a whole, much larger area of this graph. So that means that we take into account more different motions, and probably our model is also going to be able to make predictions on these motions. And indeed, what we did see is that we were closer able to follow our reference in red using the neural network that used both the experimental and the simulated training data, so that's shown in green. Especially on the joint angles, we really saw that our data augmentation improved our estimations. And also for the joint moment, it did improve, but it did not always improve for the joint moments, which we think is due to the simplifications of our model that therefore do not always correctly add data that is correct for the humans that are actually in the data sets. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
One question is, since you want to combine physics and machine learning, so why not you don't use the physical inspired neural network? I mean, PIN, you already use it?
Well, we're not talking about it right now, but we just started 2 projects actually on that. Yeah.
Can you repeat it? Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, the question was, why are we not using physics-informed neural networks? And the answer is we just started actually looking at it.
Thank you for this nice presentation. Do you think that with this approach it's possible to estimate the individual muscle properties as well?
We hope so. So the kind of backstory behind this is that you can recognize people by the way they move. And so that means that somehow in our movements there is information about our person. And that is what we're trying to extract. But if it's going to work, I don't know.
Probably I misunderstood something. You showed that there's a neural network, you have the length of some properties of the muscle, and then you can predict the force. You don't have any muscle model beside.
No.
Because you said that I want to basically mix the mechanical model and neural network, but it was completely neural network.
Right. So the question is, do we want to combine? How do I combine a neural network with the biomechanical model? And in this case, the idea is that the neural network replaces the Hill-type model, but the multi-body dynamics would still come from the physics model. So so it's true that the Hill model is entirely replicated, but the complete system is still a combination.
Is it then fair to comparison because you basically do kind of learn to find the parameters and kind of has provided learning, I guess. And then it is fitting the data, and then you showed somewhere there are some improvements, some other places. But I think it is a fair comparison.
So I guess the answer to the question
Can you-
is that right
can
now,
you repeat the question?
So the question is it fair to compare? I'm not sure exactly
Yeah,
what you mean.
you in one case you basically feed the data and then try to train another one. You have a model and then you just probably tune some parameters, and then I think it's I'm asking if it's a.
So what we did in this case is, so we're not actually yet doing this combination. And what we did is we also optimized the Hill model with the same data as we used for the training of the neural network. So we optimized different model parameters for that.
I'll take 2 more questions. Jesse and Martin, please.
So, just out of curiosity, these models are typically really good at interpolation and bad at extrapolation, so that unknown speeds of tasks. Can you speak to when you do the augmented data set with the simulated data, if you see either positive effects on extrapolating or interpolating the data, or possibly turning it into building it off of the original data set?
So the question is, do we see benefits of the simulated data for extrapolating? So it's not necessarily directly Well, the benefit is that because we cover this larger area, we have to do less extrapolating. Because, for example, like a point here is based on the measured data would be an extrapolation, but now that we have simulated data to cover that area, we're now still interpolating. Does that make sense?
So you found that even because it's from, at least from my understanding, more added variability or added noise, not actually additional activities, you still get the benefits of extrapolating to, let's say, like an unknown walking speed or unknown like, functional task?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, yeah.
Mark, was there a question?
It was already postponed.
Great. Yeah, we're 1 minute over time. Perfect.